would have started anyway. Now we are recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Please feel free to put questions in the chat. You can also just put a question mark, and we'll make sure that we come back and give you an opportunity to ask your question. We are here to provide you with whatever information we can. And a reminder, we will be sending these slides out. So our first slide here will give you all of our contact information. We've got our emails, our extensions there. Let me just mute. There we go. If you could just double check that your computer is on mute so that as you're shuffling around, and we will do the same as teachers, just so that we can minimize the amount of background noise. And we're going to start our evening with a presentation from Miss Moses.
Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Nancy Moses, and I'm your student's language arts teacher on the Sapphire team. A little bit about me. I have 2 children, both grown. You can see them there. I love animals. I think most of my pictures here feature animals, and the students will attest to animals on every one of my morning slides or my get ready slides. Enjoy photography, travel. I'm a travel junkie. So, and can't put down books. So the 7th grade curriculum is aligned with Common Core standards for 7th grade, including reading literature, informational text, writing in three genres: informational, argument, and narrative, and speaking and listening. And in a minute, I'm going to go over the our first unit. Each of our units is going to feature a different genre of writing, and some of our units are going to feature short stories, and some of our units will feature whole class novels, and a unit will also feature small book groups. All right, thank you. So through interacting with our curriculum, the students are going to continue to develop independence in reading and learning, and continue building their content knowledge of language arts. And this includes becoming stronger readers and strategic readers. We're going to be learning some close reading strategies, really powerful strategies to help them to identify key details that are going to help them to understand deeper meanings and uncover themes and some character motivations that may not have been so evident. So there's some powerful reading strategies that are ahead for our students. They're going to be evaluating evidence and selecting the most appropriate evidence, and then using it to support their thinking. And that's going to be a big part of our verbal discussions, as well as and turning that into organized and thoughtful writing. We are going to be using technology and digital media strategically, responsibly, and capably. So, and we know our students are definitely used to using technology now, but we need to make sure that we're using it responsibly. And our units are including some texts that are going to provide some perspectives as part of our equity initiative here in West Hartford. So they will be exposed to different cultures and different ways of thinking through interacting with these texts and interacting with their peers as we work through these texts. All right, our first unit is focusing on the narrative. We're going to be using primarily in this unit short stories, and you may have seen those at home already. We're going to be practicing and using these, well, they're not new, but these powerful reading strategies, really these close reading strategies, and using them on these common texts, these short stories. And then they're going to be practicing and interacting with these in their independent reading books in a workshop model. We're going to be, let's see, we have some short videos, and I'm introducing some of these strategies and some elements of fiction using picture books because they're they're pretty accessible and quick to use. Let's see, we're going to be continuing grammar instruction. Our piece of writing in this particular unit is a piece of narrative, but we're also going to be working on analytical writing as we explore theme and characterization. Okay. And finally, independent reading is something near and dear to my heart. And I think probably the number one thing that your students can do and embrace while they are here at KP and actually throughout their lives. And one of the reasons I became a teacher is to help students discover a joy and love of reading. And we're going to be doing that by reading books that we want to read. So in one of the beauties of our curriculum is that we allow, well, students can self-select their independent reading books. And when they can select books that they like, they're going to read. They need to bring their book every day to class. I want them to be reading every night, 20 to 30 minutes. I realize that sometimes students are busy. They have a schedule where they might have classes or lessons or sports, and they know that they can skip a night or two and then make it up on other nights. But reading is really key. It's not on this slide, but what you can do at home is really help to support that reading. That reading is important and it's part of a life of curiosity and interest, and maybe create some time for family reading time, or just ask your student what they're reading, and see if they're moving their way through a book and finishing books. We'll be certainly checking that in our class, but I think your interest at home will go a long way. And there's some fabulous books if you want to read with your students too. The middle grade books are really fun to read. Okay. And finally, I wanted to talk about advisory, which students have every day after their first 2 academic periods. It's an opportunity for a mask break and for snack. That's a big part of advisory time that students look forward to. But more importantly, I think, is this connection and relationship that they build with a teacher or one adult in the building that they know they can come to, and also develop relationships with their peers in their advisory group. It does create a climate of trust. We have advisory every day, and our days of the week are planned. On Mondays, we have Mindful Mondays, and we use that time to organize for the week. So students are going to be looking into Powerschool and seeing and checking their assignments, checking classroom, looking to see if they have any missing work, make sure they have all that they need for the week ahead, and plan if there are projects we can work on, kind of chunking out what they're working on and getting set for the week ahead. Talk to Me Tuesday is an opportunity for everybody to get to know each other. And then Wednesday and Thursday are days for lessons, and in addition to the mask breaks and snacks. And those will include SEL lessons, social emotional health, learning rather, social justice, the vision of the graduate, and monthly, and there are some monthly themes. On Friday, it's Fun Friday, so kick back and have fun on Friday. All right.
Great, thanks. Let's see. Last I checked, so Miss Skerrick is our resource teacher. She also teaches some language arts to several of our students. She's unable to join us at the moment, but will be available if she is a direct teacher of your child. I can help connect you to her, or you can reach out via email and she will happily give you a call. So let's send it on over to Teacher Ward.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Kat Ward. I am the long-term substitute for Miss Keyswetter, who is currently not available to teach science right now. She will be returning in November. I am really excited to work with all of our students this year. A little bit about myself. I'm a graduate of CCSU. I love camping and hiking and just being outdoors in general. I was an EMT during the beginning of this pandemic. I was an EMT for a few years prior to working as a teacher, and I just recently got married this past summer. So that's a picture from my wedding. So for science this year, so the state of Connecticut uses what's called NGSS, which is Next Generation Science Standards. For science education, that creates a more three-dimensional learning to kind of build a foundation for understanding science throughout each school year. It includes science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts in physical science, life science, earth and space science, and engineering design. To learn more about that, I did put the link up for the nextgenscience.org, which has information about NGSS there. So 7th grade science is very much a lot of life science. We have 6 major units. We start off learning about the building blocks of life in our matter unit, learning about the atom and atomic structure. We learn about what atoms are made of and how they are used as the fundamental units for everything that exists. We then switch over to learning about cells and their structure and their function and how cells interact with each other for certain cellular processes inside different organisms. After cell structure and cell function, we learn about heredity and how cells transfer their genetic information to pass on chromosomes from one generation to the next. Then we talk about natural selection and how organisms interact with their environment so that they can survive to pass on their genes. And then our last unit is the human body, which is at the end of the school year. And we learn about how different parts of the body interact with each other in order to perform certain functions and processes, again, for survival. So the goal for middle school students is to learn how to define different scientific problems more precisely, to conduct a more thorough process of choosing the best solution and to optimize the final design. We do this through labs where we practice asking questions, developing models to test these questions, planning and carrying out investigations, analyzing and interpreting data, using math and computational thinking, constructing explanations, and designing solutions, and engaging in argument from evidence, and then obtaining, evaluating, and communicating that information. I've also started doing something this year where I call it Science Skill Friday. And during Science Skill Friday, we take those skills that we've learned in 6th grade and we practice using them in other scenarios so that we can make sure we understand those, because those are very fundamental skills to use for as they go into 8th grade and even to high school and further. And then I'm going to talk to you about the Google Classroom and homework. This year, the Google Classroom is going to look very similar to last year's. Each student will have their to-do list, which is, I believe, organizes it based on the due date. So it organizes what's more recently due and then later assignments. This year, the Google Classrooms are color-coded. I didn't put the color coding on the slide, but I will definitely update that information. But language arts is yellow, math is blue, science is green, social studies is red, world language is purple, their unified arts are gray, and if there are in Quest, their Google Classroom is teal. And then advisory classrooms and the team classroom is also maroon. And then students can also view their work underneath the classwork tab of the Google Classroom. And each class has it organized by either topic or week. I organize my Google Classrooms weekly, so they can check what's more recently due for them. And I think that's it.
Great. So just speaking of Google Classrooms, since I have you all here, I'm just going to give you a sneak peek into the Google Classroom that we have created for the kids on as our team classroom. And when you go to the classwork tab, you'll see we've got a link to our homework calendar, to our overall team website where you can find information about contacting teachers, where our current newsletter lives. The homework calendar is on there. And then if you also scroll down, all the information about after school activities and student clubs, some of our advisory work, the current lunch menu, those are all posted. So if you're ever, trying to help redirect your student to one of these things, refer them to our team Google Classroom, and you should be able to find most things that you need. And then if they still can't find them there, then please encourage them to reach out to us via email. But I thought this would be a good moment to just give you a little preview of that. All right. Mr. Bannon.
Hi, good evening. My name is Matt Bannon. I just want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, albeit virtually. I'm the social studies teacher on the Sapphire team. This is my 12th year at KP, my 3rd year on the Sapphire team. Graduated from CCSU with both my bachelor's and master's in education. At home, I have 2 cats, a little girl that's almost 3, and my wife. We are expecting also our 2nd child in February, and I am an avid fan of the Red Sox and other Boston teams, to the much chagrin of students that I've already heard from this year already. So in social studies this year, the curriculum is tied to kind of tied to 6th grade, in that both grades. Thank you, Mr. Kotler. One student guessed that I'm over 50 this year, so that was my thing. It's world regional studies. So in 7th grade social studies, students will explore the geography, history, culture, and really the contemporary events of the 3 following regions of the world: China and East Asia, Middle East, and India and South Asia. So we look at kind of a holistic approach to these regions, where we kind of tie in a bunch of different type of activities in to better understand kind of the regions, the countries where they are today, and kind of what influenced them to where they are today. We also will focus on global issues and current events as they come up through the year. As big things happen, I like to try to bring as much current stuff into the class, even if it's not connected to one of those 3 regions of the world. All right. So just a few of the skills that we focus on in social studies. The first one, big one, being inquiry and research process. We really work on the research process and what that looks like, specifically how we connect the idea of inquiry-based learning to it. And that means students work on developing questions that helps guide their own research, hopefully connected to some interests that they have in different topics throughout the year, and how they can locate relevant information using a variety of resources, such as databases, free web, even books that we still try to use that the library has available to us. And then along with the research process, a big one that I stress is evaluating websites. A lot of the information that we're going to be using this year is websites, free web, stuff like that, and teaching students how to evaluate websites, what they should be looking for to make sure the information is up to date, reliable, accurate as well. Second thing that we focus on in different ways throughout the year is just examining multiple perspectives, trying to gain an understanding that events, topics, all of these different things can be looked at through multiple perspectives, and not always just kind of sticking with our own perspective, but understanding that there's other viewpoints out there, and how can we understand those in order to strengthen our own as well. The main writing piece that we do in social studies is argument writing. And what we really focus on is students being able to locate and use evidence from the text to support their claims. We do this in a variety of ways throughout the year, but making sure students, are strong in argument writing and how they can use actual evidence from text in order instead of just kind of emotional pieces to it. Powerschool. So Powerschool is a very important tool that we really like to stress that both students and parents and caregivers use throughout the year. A little bit about our team when it comes to Powerschool. Grades are typically updated at least once per week. Projects, longer term assignments, bigger things, they may show a collected check mark until they're all graded, just so that way you or the student can be aware that they're collected, but maybe the teacher just didn't get to grade all of them because it's an essay or a project, whatever a longer term thing may be. And grades are fluid and may change until the last day of the quarter when grades get locked. So that's why it's a good thing for students to kind of check, every so often, once a week, so they can keep in touch and not just wait until the end of the quarter when they're like, oh, I got to get caught up with this missing work now. And students and parents, everybody, that you all have your own access. And we have been encouraging and actually having students check Powerschool during our advisories on Mondays. And that is something we're going to continue. But it will be, also important for students to check every so often on their own, once per week ideal, just so they can keep up to date and stay up to date and contact teachers when needed. And we also encourage you to check once a week as well. And if you need help with your Powerschool account, I put the contact information for our kind of Powerschool contact in the office, Myra Lazada, and that is her phone number and extension in the office there as well.
Great. So the question in the chat was, how is late work graded? And I think in general, this team is we put the emphasis on completing the work. We would rather it be turned in late, even if it's extremely late, than not at all, because if we're assigning it, it's important practice to be done. That being said, the same way that if you pay a bill late, there's a small fine, there may be a small fine on your graded assignment, and that really will depend on the teacher. And so within the slides that I will send you, there are the full course expectations that hopefully teachers have outlined exactly what that looks like for each of us. But if you're ever in doubt and you want to reach out to a specific teacher to get their exact late policy, please reach out via email or phone call, and we'd be happy to talk to you specifically about that. All right, let's turn it over to Mrs. Stobley for some math information.
All right, hello everyone. Glad you're all here. I probably should have updated my pictures. My son is a little bit older than that. He's almost 2 now. Very much like Miss Moses, I'm a huge animal person, specifically dogs. That's my dog Bear. You can ask any of your kids about Bear. They know about him. But on a positive note, Bear is in a lot of our word problems. So it's not like I just talk about my dog. I make the kids solve problems about Bear. And that's how I can talk about him and show pictures all the time. Sorry if I rambled a little bit too much about my dog. This is my 10th year at King Philip. Had to think about that for a second. It's my 10th year. All 10 years I have been on the Sapphire team teaching 7th grade math. Ms. Gallagher and I have been working together all 10 of those years as well. Before middle school, I taught high school. I taught Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and pre-calculus. So even though I really liked learning those subjects, I was a huge fan of teaching middle school because there's so much more application to their everyday lives and less on like the engineering standpoint. Okay, so our topics of study will differ based on if your kid is in standard or honors. Our standard math, we're starting the year with ratios, rates, scale drawings. Circles get thrown into that mix as well. Pretty much what you would think of if you're talking about ratios and rates and just comparing numbers, simplifying rates. We have some fractional problems in here, which are going to get a little bit challenging, but overall, the first unit for most kids is really strong and they can appreciate the applications. We have operations with rational numbers, so they get to work with negative numbers this year. That is the only non-calculator unit in standard this year. So if your kid is working on homework at home and they're working with a calculator, they are allowed to, except for that one unit. And that one unit starts usually like mid to end October and lasts through December. That's a pretty long unit. There's a lot to it, but that's the only time they cannot use a calculator. And then we get into our expressions, equations, inequalities, all that fun algebra stuff with our variables, percents and stats, and probability actually kind of go together. That's an awesome unit for me as a huge sports fan because I talk a lot about sports in that unit. We do sports, we do games. The kids like that unit because we do a lot of dice games and like predictions, and they get to kind of analyze some data. It's a pretty neat unit. And then we also do a little bit of geometry, not a ton of geometry in standard, where we talk about volume, surface area, triangles, and angles. In honors math, we have fewer units, but they're a little bit heftier. We start the year with some proportional relationships and functions. So those of you who remember high school algebra, you probably have some fond memories, or maybe not so fond. I'm going to assume fond, though, of like slope and y-intercept and y equals mx plus b and all those great things where you get to graph a linear function. That's actually the first unit of the year in honors. After that, we move into 2 and 3D geometry, a ton of application questions in that section. In that section, I love to talk to the kids about like remodeling a house and figuring out how much things would cost if they were to, redecorate or do different things in a house. And I've even brought in like a blueprint of my own house and made them calculate if I wanted to get new floors, what would it cost? So they tend to enjoy that unit. And then we get into probably the most difficult unit of the year. That would be systems of equations. Again, that's something you probably remember from high school algebra, but it is now a 7th grade pre-algebra honors math topic. And then we also do probability, the same unit we do in standard. We do a lot of games and statistics. They do enjoy that too. And then real number relationships. We get into like exponent properties and Pythagorean theorem, cube roots, square roots. That is actually a no calculator unit for honors as well. So our goal for kids leaving middle school, and actually this is their goal through high school as well, is to be able to model problems using mathematics. The great thing about really 7th grade and beyond is, yes, we still use Common Core, but we're not as much sticklers for you have to do something like this exact way. I know in elementary school, sometimes kids were frustrated when their parents would show them how to do something and their teacher said, well, it has to be done a different way. Not so much when you're in middle school. So as long as they can model a problem appropriately and solve it, get to an answer, that's really one of our main goals. We want them to be able to use tools strategically. If they're going to use a calculator, I do want them to know how to use it. I don't want them to use calculators, like that have fraction buttons, but not actually know how to use them. We also, this is a big one, if I were in school right now, I'd put a little star next to this. We like them to be able to construct arguments and critique the reasoning of others. This doesn't necessarily mean telling people they're wrong. This means even if they agree with someone, in elementary school, they do like, oh, I agree, like this. And in middle school, we try to make them push it a little bit further. Like, why do you agree? What about their thinking sounds pretty reasonable to you? Or if you disagree, why do you disagree? And like, how could you improve their argument? Of course, it's math. So we do look for the right answers. We're going to attend to precision. And then we also want to work on making sense of problems and persevering in solving them. Perseverance is really one of those skills we work on a lot in 7th grade. I like to give parents a little bit of an overview of what it looks like in my classroom. Most days we start with a warm-up and then we review the homework. My theory on homework, if it's important enough to assign it, it's important enough to go over and make sure they did it right. Kids self-correct their own homework. So they show me they've completed it, and then they are responsible for fixing any mistakes, any and all mistakes. I say that's how you learn. Kids sometimes get frustrated. They say, oh, I made mistakes here. I did this wrong. And I say, well, that's how you learn, right? You learn, and let's talk about how to fix that mistake so you don't do it again. After we do like the start of the lesson, there's either direct instruction, which is like if we're teaching something new, or some sort of practice. My practice branches out in a lot of different things. We'll do whiteboards. There's a lot of online things that we do now. Kahoot is a game they probably maybe have talked about. They tend to enjoy it. And GimKit is another one they really like. Quizzes, they don't like as much, but it sends me a lot of good data. We use a program called Desmos. This one's a little bit newer to some of the people in our department. Desmos is math specific, and it's really great when it comes to like graphing functions and just things that you can't really do on other platforms. And then I have up there just other things we do, scavenger hunts, blue kits, escape rooms. So anything I can do to turn a worksheet into something a little bit more exciting, I'm going to do it, because this is middle school and you want to make middle school a little bit more fun. All right, so just like the other teachers talked about certain things, I'll talk a little bit about Sapphire homework. So we want students to get in the habit of checking the classroom homework board. What I mean is not Google Classroom. I mean physical classroom. I mean when they're in our classroom, we each have a homework board and we always have the homework written down. And we tell the kids, please write this down in your agenda. That's especially helpful for long-term assignments or keeping track of assessments that are coming up. We surveyed the kids in our period 1 classes to determine if they need an agenda, if they would like us to get one through the school. So we are working on that. Check in with your kid, and if they either didn't get surveyed or they're unsure, reach out to anyone on team and we will put them down as someone who requires an agenda and we'll get one for them. And Ms. Gallagher can speak more to when they're coming in, but we have to place the order first. So we have to make sure we've reached every kid, and now we're reaching the parents as well. In addition to our actual rooms, parents, you're not in our rooms. So if you're wondering if they didn't write something down, you guys can check the homework calendar, which Ms. Gallagher already showed you guys where you can find it in the Sapphire team classroom. And Ms. Gallagher, would you mind clicking to show them just what it looks like again? Yep. So if you guys look, you can see each one of our classes. So like mine, for example, math honors finished the Kahoot if they did not finish during class. And then in standard, there was no homework. You can see, language arts, both classes, science. We have all of our classes up there. And that's just telling you the nightly homework for each kid. So if they didn't write things down when they were in school, you can check the homework calendar online and just have like your backup. Okay. In addition to that homework calendar and the agenda, they also have the to-do list, which Kat touched upon. That's right in their Google Classroom, and they can find electronic copies of their homework. A good amount of us, if the homework is a worksheet, tend to give them the physical worksheet as well as have an electronic copy in the classroom. I always tell the kids, I know everyone else does too, remember, only do one. Please don't do both. We give you both options because if you're a paper fan like I am, you want to write your work out. If that's the case, you bring your work to class. If you would rather do things online, do it online, but please just do one. And then the question came in, what do we do about late work? We definitely accept late homework with a small penalty. This one might be a little bit more by teacher. I accept it until the unit is over, and some teachers are willing to accept it until the quarter is over. All right, so that's a little bit about Sapphire Math. Sapphire Math will be with me until November, but as your kids might have told you, I think you got an email as well. I'm also having another child. I'm having a boy in November. So I have a long-term substitute who's with us here today, and she's going to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everybody. My name is Miss Manchular, and I will be long-term sub for Miss Tobley, just as said, for the rest of the year. A bit of myself. I have 17 years of math teaching experience from India. Teaching at Sedgwick before joining the KP. That's why I just blended the two flags together. I have two sons, and both of them went to West Hartford Public School. I'm KP parent with also having Sapphire connections. At the same time, I would like to share that I'm observing from day one of this school year, and I will follow the same. I'm fully aware of math curriculum and wanted to share my past and present experience with students. I have also tutored Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 in our WHPS summer school. I did math tutoring for our community from elementary to high school students. I posted garden, my husband with my both sons. I live in this town. So you could see me around. I'm so excited for my new role and wishing the best to Ms. Tobley. My email ID is rashmi_manchikar@whps.org. Feel free to email me if you have any questions and concerns. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, it's my turn. I realize I've chimed in several times and never introduced myself. So I am Gallagher. I'm the French teacher, but I'm also the Sapphire team leader. So definitely a good contact person for you if you have any questions or concerns related to 7th grade or the Sapphire team. This is my little girl, McKenna. And I'm going to, instead of focusing on my French class, because I don't have everyone on the Sapphire team, I've collected information about the world language department that I can kind of give you some general insight into our department. And then each of the individual teachers should be sending something to you to give you some more specifics about their class. I will, in the slides that I'm sharing with you, include everyone's contact information specifically. We've got 2 different teachers for Spanish 1B for 7th grade Spanish. So just make sure you double check with your child to make sure you're contacting the correct Spanish teacher if you've got any questions, although I'm sure that they would happily forward you to the other teacher if needed. Mrs. Stobley touched on some of the technology things that we use, and we use those in world language as well. The piece that's important to keep in mind is when you're at home and you see your child using Quizlet or using Kahoot, or maybe not Kahoot, but GimKit or one of those games at home, it might seem like they're just playing a game, but if it was assigned by one of their teachers, it really is reinforcing some of the concepts that we're working on in class. And it's a really great tool, at least in world language, to just work on memorization, to get those definitions into your brain, and this, maybe not so much spelling, but those kinds of things. We're moving towards interactive and interpersonal activities again, thank goodness, especially with learning a language. If you can't have a conversation, it's really hard to practice. So we're keeping our distance, but still doing paired activities. Scavenger hunts have very clear guidelines, but kids are starting to move around the rooms and using mini whiteboards so that teachers are getting immediate feedback. There's lots of songs and music, and hopefully that's being shared with you at home if it's something that they find interesting. I'm going to use this moment to make my case for wordreference.com and not for Google Translate. Google Translate is a very impressive piece of technology, but it also leads to students submitting work that is not their own, and it also leads to presenting work that they don't really understand the rules and all the pieces that went into creating that sentence or that phrase. And so my plea to students is to use word reference. That allows kids to look up words one at a time. It allows them to use the rules and the concepts that we're really focusing on in class, and it truly gives their teacher a better representation of their understanding than Google Translate will. And I know many of the teachers in the World Language Department have made it very clear that use of Google Translate is the same as maybe cheating or copying someone else's work. And there will be consequences, not only in their grade, but also in their citizenship grade for their report card if they're using that. But again, no one expects kids to know all of the words. Please encourage them to look things up, but using the right resources instead of maybe the easy resource. This was all sent home to you, the grading, but I did just want to highlight, because it is somewhat different, that in world language, we're giving interpretive grades, meaning assessing how well they're taking in the language they're learning. And that's done through our reading and listening activities. We're also assessing productive skills through their writing and their speaking. So as you're looking in Powerschool and you see those broken down by category, that should give you as a parent a better sense of your own child's language skills. If their productive skill grade is very low, that usually indicates that more practice is needed to really learn vocabulary and be able to apply grammar, and just more practice. Maybe they're not completing all of the practice materials that are being offered. If they're very strong in that area, then if you go to Quebec or wherever else that speaks another language, who's ordering dinner. Content knowledge is those traditional grades, and commitment to learning is very much like our effort grades, but with the language. A huge part of commitment to learning is taking chances and using that language in class. And so that's really something to remind students at home if you're seeing low grades for commitment to learning. So 5 minutes over our plan, but thank you so much. We're going to stay on, and I'm also going to put in the chat the link. Our Unified Arts teachers, that's not a live link, but can somebody copy and fix that for me if possible? Our UA teachers are also in a separate meet. So we're going to open up the floor to questions and answers. If you put a question mark into the chat, we can go in order of who, thank you, Teacher Ward. We can go in order of people who asked questions, just so everyone gets their turn. If you don't have any questions, thank you again for joining us, and you're welcome to head over to the UA meeting. UAs, just as a reminder, music, tech ed, art, PE, health. So if you've got questions about those subjects, the link in the chat will give you access to those teachers to ask the specifics. So I'm going to step back for a moment, and if you've got questions, feel free to type them into the chat and I can just read them out and answer them. Or you can put the question mark and unmute your microphone and ask them that way. So the first question is, do students need to wait until November to request a locker, or can they ask for it sooner if they turned it down the first time? The lockers are always available. If tomorrow your student would like their locker, they just need to tell their advisor and we can get them their padlock and their assigned locker, and they can use that starting immediately. The second question, how do kids go about seeking extra help? We've got multiple opportunities for extra help in our day. Lunch is always an option, although right now with us wearing masks, we really encourage kids to get outside, be able to take their masks off, eat lunch, and enjoy. So we would prefer Learning Lab, which is our study hall, as a chance. They just need to check in with that teacher to get a pass to go see them. We also, I think, with some restrictions, can be available before or after school with prior notice. And so just reaching out to the specific teacher via email or seeing them at the end of class, that will allow us to arrange a time that works for everyone to be able to chat and to work together. Is choir included in the arts Zoom link? I don't know that they're talking specifically about choir, but the choir teacher is in that Google Meet. So I'm sure if you went over, he probably could answer any questions that you have. And I'm happy to let any one of the other teachers jump in if you want to talk about any adjustments being made to curriculum approach coming off of last year's unusual year.
Yep, I can actually speak to that because I know that's something in the math department we talked about quite a bit. We are dialing back a little bit of the content. So some of the units will be a little bit shorter, meaning we're just not taking into account that kids have all of the background knowledge that they used to have. So we're really just like building those skills within some of the units as the year goes on. We're still targeting the main 7th grade Common Core state standards, but some of the supporting standards are going to be the ones that kind of take a little bit of a back seat, or maybe they hadn't before. And like I said, the big thing is just skill building throughout the year. And I feel like it's a bad word to say, but like the math department is using IXL to fill in some of those skills. So if they do see IXL homework, a lot of times that is what it is for math specifically.
And I think just across the board, all of the teachers are being very cognizant of maybe the skills that were not addressed, or even just some of the lost skills as students. I mean, none of us have been in typical school. We were talking today how our current 7th graders haven't had normal school since 4th grade. And that really affects kids. And so we're trying to be really explicit in the way that we're teaching not only our content, but also our study skills, our learning skills. And we might find, as we went over today, curriculum, this year we're going to talk about, we may not get to the ones at the end because we're taking so much time to make sure that kids are actually mastering the skills that are at the core of 7th grade. And you should also know that we're talking, cross grade level. I'm not going to skip units as a 7th grade teacher and then the 8th grade teachers will expect them to know those things. There is plenty of communication. We meet almost weekly as departments to discuss how we're progressing through our curriculum. And so all of those pieces and all of those shifts are being taken into consideration as we move forward. The question is, what is the criteria to get into honors? And maybe we touch briefly on math and language arts, if you don't mind.
Okay. I'll talk to LA. So honors, these were recommendations made by the 6th grade teachers. That was the first criteria. And then this year, there are students who have been, based on what we have observed and data about students, standard or honors placement may have changed, but most of the time these honors placements are being made by 6th grade teachers, and they take into consideration the student and those were teachers who were, whether they were in the remote school or here or at KP on site in school. Anybody in those classes would have had an opportunity. Those teachers would have been able to recommend a student for honors. So it would be based on their testing and their work portfolio during their 6th grade year.
Math honors is really similar to language arts, with the difference of we do put some emphasis on the iReady test to see what their scores were at the end of 6th grade. And even as they were taking at the start of 7th grade this year, I was really looking at the scores to see if any of them seemed as if they should be bumped up a level. We kind of take that first month to look at the iReady score and then see what they produced during the class period, the work ethic, and like their first few assessment scores to see if maybe they should bump up a level. But the majority of that placement would be the end of 6th grade. And those 6th grade teachers took into account the iReady scores, their assessment scores within the class, and then their overall work ethic.
So let's say your child is one who is struggling right now and is missing assignments or is needing a little extra help getting caught up. Mr. Kotler just reminded us that we do have our 7th grade homework center. It runs every Thursday afternoon from 3 to 4 with a teacher from King Philip. It's not necessarily a Sapphire teacher, but definitely somebody who is able to answer questions related to the curriculum and the assignments that are being given. That is, students have the ability to sign up for Homework Club on their own. They're emailed a Google form sign up each week to reserve a spot, but we can also as adults sign them up for that. So if that's something you're interested in requiring for your own child, or at least finding out more information, please feel free to reach out. Another option, if we have students that are missing significant work, is Saturday Academy, which will begin next weekend, I believe, as we enter into October. I can't believe it. That is 3 hours of work time on a Saturday morning, again, with a King Philip teacher, not necessarily from the Sapphire team. And for Saturday Academy, we provide those students with a prioritized list of assignments to help them get caught up in the most meaningful way possible. We're not spending time on the games or the worksheets that are secondary practice, but the meaty assignments that are really going to bring their grades up and help them. So if that sounds like something that you think your child would benefit from, again, we'll reach out to you if we see a need for it. But if you checking Powerschool think maybe one Saturday will help get us back on track, you can always request it yourself. I am going to leave the meet open. We still have a few more minutes that we're available. If you've got more questions, please add them to the chat or unmute your microphone. And we are here to answer anything you have. Are we evaluating on a schedule prior to 8th grade placements? Each of the teachers are monitoring work throughout the 7th grade year. And if a placement recommendation is a change from their current placement, that's a conversation that can be had. The teacher will reach out to the parent, or if you are interested in learning more information about if that level change is an option for your child, you can reach out to that teacher specifically to try to get some more concrete data of whether the move is appropriate or whether their current placement is a better placement for them. And the standardized kind of universal screening tests that we do throughout the year will also be indicators of placement changes. I didn't mean to speak for both of you, but I think that I'm trying to practice good wait time and let people think about their questions if they have them. If not, and again, please put your questions in the chat if you have them, but we are so appreciative of you giving up an hour of your time on a weeknight during what is a very busy back to school. We know that for sure. And if you think of your question later on and you want to send us an email, we can address it as a whole team, or I can make sure it gets forwarded to the proper teacher to make sure that all the information you need is provided. Do we have any indications on SBAC returns? That I don't have the answer for, so somebody's going to have to jump in.
I'm wondering what you mean by SBAC returns. We are going to be, the students will be taking the SBAC test assessment this spring. So just as we did last year. And throughout the school year, I know in language arts, we use some of their interim assessments as we are assessing where they fall in terms of their capabilities.
Okay, well, I'm going to end the recording, but again, we'll stay on for a few more minutes if you think of any other questions. I just wanted to make sure that some of these questions I'm sure are ones that other people may have, and so it was helpful to just keep it running.